Welcome to our very first exciting live Real Talk podcast event. We are here at Grace Pizza out on the patio, enjoying some delicious pizza and shakes. And I'm so glad that we have a live audience here today for this very special taping. I'm your host, Pastor Thea, currently serving at First United Methodist Church Pearland, who has just been so awesome in receiving this podcast, getting into some real talk conversations, talking about faith and doubt with real people, and that's what we plan to continue today. Also want to give a shout out to Pearland Podcast Studio, who's helped make this whole season possible, and I'm excited to share this event with all of you. Today, we're going to have a panel discussion about a very easy, light topic about heaven and hell. And you, audience members, are invited to participate. So there's a QR code. It's going to be back there. That's where you can text in your questions. Go ahead and scan it now. That way you're ready. You can post anonymously, which I highly encourage, unless you want us, because if I see your name, I might be deterred. Go ahead and text in your questions you already have about heaven and hell. If more come up during our discussion, you're welcome to text those in as well. I want to kick it off by just having each of my panelists here introduce yourself and just briefly, why did you say yes to this experience today? You can go ahead and start.
Hey, my name is Lorenzo Hayes, and I was asked, so that's simple as that. And I'm always doing. I like the concept. I like being able to come out and help out the church any way I can. So that's why I say yes.
I'm Lindsay Pulido. I am a writer and a spoken word artist. I have a background in ministry and education. I said yes because I've seen Thea lift weights and I'm afraid of her. I think it's a really interesting topic and that nobody has the right answers. So I feel like I don't have to have all the wisdom. I get to just enjoy the discussion.
And I'm Mike Thompson, and I'm here because I made the mistake of answering my phone when Thea called. And I have a hard time saying no, especially to Thea. Awesome. But no, in all seriousness, I think it's important that we get some other voices in the room, that it's not just the pastor that has all the answers, that we've all got an opportunity to share and think about what the Bible has to say to us. And it's important to get all the voices out there.
Awesome. Thank you so much to each of you for saying yes, whatever your reasons are. And I love what Lindsay alluded to. The reason why I picked this topic is because it has come up in every circle I've been in recently. We were meeting for tacos in January and February, and it came up every single week as we discussed our faith. It's come up with families as they've been talking to their children, as their children have been asking that question. And even I visited our confirmation class a few weeks ago, and it came up multiple times. And so this is a topic people have questions about. And also my favorite thing about it is the United Methodist official stance on heaven and hell is we don't know. We have a lot of guesses, assumptions. The Bible gives us a lot of clues, but we actually believe that our time here on earth is probably more important since that's what we really do know. And so tonight, it's really a free conversation where nobody has to win or lose, but we can just think and talk freely about what we believe about these really big concepts of heaven, hell, and eternity. And so to kick it off, I just wanted to start by asking, what do you imagine heaven to be like?
Okay, I love this question.
Yeah.
So I imagine heaven to be the place where we have no separation from God. There's nothing that separates us in our being, in our spirit, in our activities, the way that we have right now in our bodies and the things that we encounter on earth, right? We have so many things that get in the way, things that pull us away from our relationship with God. And to me, heaven is the complete absence of that. It's just a non-issue.
So when Thea told us she'd ask us this question, I did my best. I went to Google, and I Googled, what does the Bible say heaven is? And I got like 25 answers. So I think that tells you a lot, that there's a lot of ideas out there about what is heaven like. A couple of them that I liked was it's where we are with God. Heaven is where God and Jesus and the saints are, and that's where we go when we die. And that's the place for the believers. And that gives me a great deal of comfort that that's what heaven is like, that there's a place for us after our time at this world. And I mentioned to Thea a couple weeks ago, I had a thing I was going to share that there's a band back in the 90s named Audio Adrenaline. And they published a song called Big House. And I just love the way they put it, that it's in my Father's house. It's a big, big house with lots and lots of rooms, a big, big table with lots and lots of food, a big, big yard where we can play football. And it's just, that for me just embodies this picture of what heaven is like. It's a big place, so there's room for all of us. And it's just a great place to be.
I love it.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm with all of that, and but I watched like The Good Place, and it messed up my whole perception. Because it started off great, everything was, and I like philosophy, so like I was like, okay, this is cool, and then it got to The Good Place, and I don't know if you ever seen it, but it's like crazy every season, but they made it to The Good Place, and I kind of feel like it's not going to be like that. At least I 100% hope it's not like the first 2 or 3, 4 seasons, however. But I see it as a place where, all the temptation that you have here is gone. So, one of the places when they got there, everything you wanted was already there. You didn't need to steal. You didn't need to hurt anybody. It was all there. There was no temptation to think. Yeah, I mean, what was the point? You had everything. So that's kind of how I feel like it should be. It's just I saw The Good Place, and I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and actually mentioning The Good Place, the reality is it is different than they expected.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that that's something I try and hold on to as well, is that there's odds are it's going to be different than we expect. It's going to be different than we even maybe want to believe, because I do believe it is going to be a place of this perfect union, no division. One of my favorite ways that I've heard heaven described, it's not a place without wheelchairs. It's a place without curbs. And so there is room and space and a way for people to be how you are, versus that we are, somehow all changed into one way of being. And that's something that gives me also hope and reminds me that if Jesus says the kingdom of heaven is here and now, how might we live a little bit closer to that? And so speaking of heaven, I mean, how do you get there?
And then again, going just on some of the thoughts that I had, the simplest way is do good things. You taught that as a kid, that if you do good, this is the good place for you. This is where you go. This is heaven. You get that. That's what I'm going to keep in my mind. I'm going to continue doing the good things that I believe are good, because that's how good people are rewarded. And that's my hope.
You have to stay connected to the vine, right? All the things that we do, if we want to bear fruit that is good, we have to be connected to the right things. And we have to keep our spirit grounded in Jesus. And that will, help you stay doing those good things, but coming from the right place. You're not just doing empty good things. You're doing good things because you know that you're manifesting who you're supposed to be as an image bearer in the world. And so you're constantly returning back to God and staying in connection with who God is and how you're supposed to reflect that in the world.
Yeah, so I think the Bible tells us that it's the place for the redeemed in Jesus. So yeah, it's pretty easy. I mean, you accept Jesus, you're redeemed by Jesus, and there's a place for you in heaven.
Yeah. So easy. So simple.
So easy.
I mean, come on. I think about how what you also said, this idea of this full connection. I definitely believe in that too. And I've mentioned this before. There's a song by, I'm going to forget the name right now, but it's called Communion. And it starts off describing the garden right? Here in the garden, I'm with you completely. All of my needs are met. We are one. And then the third verse is, and here we are again through Christ in communion, through what Christ offers us, we are given that again. And so there's a piece of me that holds on to like getting into heaven. It is that communion, that connection with God, made possible through Jesus Christ in a real human form that we can relate to and understand, and that we could maybe accept his rule, God's reign, God's ways over our own, and then be relieved of some of the pressures and pieces that we're still feeling stuck in as we accept that union. I have to be honest, I don't know if there's some magical words you can say that make you go to heaven. I don't know if there is some, 3-point checklist you can follow. But I do think the more that we learn what Jesus came to offer and how he lived his life, and even maybe try to dare model and replicate a little bit of that we just might get glimpses. We might just see pieces of this perfect union, all needs met, not even a desire for air or water would be present. Maybe now and hopefully for eternity as well. That's where I'm at right now. But let's talk about the really fun one. What do you believe hell is? And how do you get there?
I was in an hour and 30-minute traffic today, so I mean, I'm pretty sure it's something. Yeah. I mean, I left work. I left home early. I'm like, I'm gonna make it on time. I'm gonna make it 30 minutes earlier, and I was like 30 minutes late than I normally am. And so I think it's something like that. Just constant frustration, 24/7. And there is absolutely no relief. That's what I would imagine, because that's what I feel.
Yeah, I think Scripture actually says no rest. Right? There's no rest.
No rest in traffic.
Or traffic, either place. Yeah, they're synonymous tonight. So I think heaven, I said, was where you're in constant communion with the Lord, right? And so to me, hell is absolute separation. You're completely separated. And so that would be hell.
Yeah. Maybe another way to think about it was I remember something one of our pastors preached many, many years ago. And he said, that, like the Bible says the wages of sin is death, that it's just dead. You're just dead. Which is another way maybe to think about you're just separated from God, is that it's not maybe being stuck in traffic forever, but it's just death. Yeah. And that seemed, again, so very simple to me that I kind of hung on to that that's what it is. And maybe we don't need to worry too much more than that.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had people who maybe don't have faith or are struggling with their faith ask me, well, what if I believe and then there is no heaven? Then what? And I said, well, then you're dead. You won't even know that you're not in heaven, right? I mean, if your worst case scenario comes out, well, you'll be dead. And so why does it even, maybe matter? I also think about the scriptures who refer, to hell as a place of gnashing of teeth, right? This constant frustration, anger, resentment built up, boiling over. And whether that's in traffic,
100%.
or in relationships, right? In the reality of the world. I've also, one of my favorite descriptions of hell is that we're all in the same room and we're all our backs are up against the wall, and there's one pot of food in the middle. And we all have really, really long spoons, like from the wall to the middle of the room. And we're all trying to feed ourselves with that spoon. And it's so big, and everybody's is in the way, and it's just a big mess, and nobody's getting fed. And that's hell. And heaven is that I realize that my spoon could feed you, and your spoon could feed her, and a place where we're actually feeding one another, and everybody's getting more than enough. And again, super simple. Can't say it's biblical, but sometimes I hold on to that as I maybe find myself in hellacious moments where my teeth are gnashing, where I am boiling over, feeling like I'm surrounded by flames of fire, maybe I'm trying to feed myself with a really big spoon instead of how I might be able to feed others. And again, just something I think about. And, like, I don't know what happens when we die. I have a lot of wishes, hopes, and questions. But yeah, the idea that maybe nothing is pretty hard to accept too.
Yeah.
Feels a little like hell. What other options might there be for heaven, hell, now, and in eternity?
Is this the question about purgatory?
Sure, go ahead. Let's get to it. Let's jump in.
I don't want to leave that discussion.
Oh, you're in it.
Go ahead.
But I mean, it's on the table, right? As another option, right? This liminal place of where you're still just not quite ready to go all the way to heaven, right? You've got some more sanctification to go through, or whatever happens in purgatory. But who's running it? Like,
Yeah.
like you've got Satan running hell, we've got God, the Trinity in heaven. So who runs purgatory? I'm sorry, I think I'm bringing more questions than answers.
It's okay. That's okay. It's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe I would answer the question by saying, well, does it matter? What does it matter if there's anything else? If there's heaven, let's go for that.
I love that.
Yeah, I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible too. So, because that I don't know, because to me, I feel like if there's any like pause or any space in between, it's the space between your birth and death, and that's pretty much where it's at. Because I mean, if you're, like I said, your goal is to get to heaven, that there's it.
Yeah, so you're living this life preparing for heaven, but let's not forget to live this life.
Yeah.
Live this life the way Jesus lived his life here, the way God would want us to live our lives.
Yeah. So since you brought up purgatory, and this is actually a question that was asked as well, moving into Q&A. So if you got a question, go ahead and text that in. Is heaven or hell eternal? Do you believe that once you're there, you're there? Or is there maybe is there an out?
I think Scripture points us to heaven being eternal, right? That's where my comfort.
Yeah, I'll go back to my simple explanation. There's heaven, which I do believe is eternal, and there's hell, which is death, which is
Kind
eternal.
of a forever thing.
Yeah, kind of a forever thing as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep it simple on that too, because that's where I'm at too.
So
Can't
let
even
me
elaborate.
So then let me throw a curveball. Actually, a confirmation class a couple weeks ago, someone defined purgatory as a place. Don't quote me. I don't know if I'm getting, but a place where you try to leave, but you keep entering the same room over and over again. Is that right, McKenna? Is that what was said? Something like that, right? And I thought to myself, the reason why I don't believe in purgatory is because my God would never trap me in a room I can't get out of, right? This God of love and goodness, mercy, redemption, renewal would never trap me really anywhere. And so it does force me to wonder, well, then am I trapped in heaven too? If I'm locked in the garden, is it actually paradise? If I'm stuck anywhere, would that also mean that I'm there? And I only bring that up because C.S. Lewis, a beloved Christian theologian, does make the hint that maybe there's a possibility that you could get into heaven, not be willing to accept the love, connection, closeness, perfection that is offered, and so be forced to leave. Now, I know that messes up a lot of theology and probably makes us all really nervous, and makes me nervous too. But there's just something of this idea for me of, if I'm locked anywhere, I'm not free. And what Jesus Christ shows me is that I'm made free. And that I would want and choose an eternal communion with him. But if I don't get the choice, is it really paradise? I wonder, any responses to that theory that might be floating out there?
Yeah, you just blew my mind. I don't know. I seriously have never thought about it that way before. But even if it's the best place ever, if I can't leave, is it the best place ever? I don't know.
I think you do have the choice. I think that's why it is an eternal gift. You get to choose if you want to spend eternity in communion with your Creator, or do you want to be somewhere else? Do you want death? Do you want separation? I think that is the choice. I think we're already making that choice every day.
I'm not going to co-sign for The Good Place, but I mean, definitely watch that show because they get into it. But I know, right? But how I feel about it when I said like heaven is a place where you don't have that temptation anymore. Well, the moment you make that choice, you know, if you're given that choice, I don't see temptation being there, and I think that free will part is added to it because it's free will to do what? What are you tempted to do if you go to a place and you don't have that need, you don't have that desire to go anymore. So that's what I think of heaven is you get to a place and you don't want to go anywhere else. You don't want to do anything else but be there. If you get to a place and you're like, I don't really like the lighting in here, that means you have a desire to go to a place with better lighting or different lighting or the ambiance is different. No, this heaven is a place where you don't have that temptation. You walk in, you're like, everything is right. I don't even think about anything else.
Sounds a little like sanctification. We Methodists like to say is that you are made perfect, and so you have no desires for anything other than. So, yeah, I can get on board with that. All right. What about angels, demons? Where are they?
Among Us? Is there a song?
Probably
When I Googled it, it said there's angels in heaven. So I believe Google.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So since we brought up Good Place, I think I have to put a plug in for Good Omen, Bad Omen.
I have not watched that
Bad
yet.
Omen, highly recommend. Not saying it's completely scriptural, but it's a fun watch. And what that kind of presents is this idea that the angels and demons are actually right here on earth. They have an eternal existence and they get pretty bored. And they love like the human existence. They love food and drinks and fun and all that stuff, poetry, right? Fast cars. But they also kind of reveal how little they have to do. That their jobs are pretty easy because we mess things up on our own all the time. And then we also prove to be like kind and loving and generous and so the reason why they're also pretty bored is because we don't need them maybe as much. And so that does make me wonder too more and more about how many are maybe around us, right? In scripture talk a lot about those with an impure spirit. Sometimes it's translated to demon. Man, I've met so many people with an impure spirit. My spirit is impure most of the time. That's why I need Jesus to cleanse me, make me new. And then angel is really this word that means something more like an agent of God's will. It doesn't say anything about feathers and halos. And man, I've met some people, plenty of you, who are doing God's will, living it out. And so I have to believe that, yeah, whether it's out of boredom or out of, this is their mission, here they are, right here with us. And maybe they'll be there too. They'll be in the other places as well. I don't know. Yeah. Any other thoughts on angels and demons?
No, I can get on board with that. I think we recognize that we experience dark spirits, right? And we experience light. And some people maybe call those energies, right? Or you've got some negativity and then you've got positive energy. So I think whatever you want to label it, and tonight we can just, angels and demons, that's what they are.
Yeah, I think whatever label you put on it, there's good and there's bad in the world. There just is. And if you want to think about it as angels and demons, that's maybe a good way to picture it in your mind. But I like what you said, Thea. It's really easy to be an angel. It's not that hard to be an angel in somebody's life. And you just, keep that in mind.
And then I go on the flip side and say, for those struggling with impure spirits, it's nice to know that you can come back to the more angelic side, and that's really cool to know, because those thoughts, the dark side, I guess, is tempting, while you're driving in traffic, and so just to know that you can go back to being that agent of God at any point is, I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And the TV show does a good job at that too. Yeah. It's not really a conversion, but there's a couple in there that are pretty exciting. Okay, another question from you guys. It was something about what kind of bodies, existence, if in heaven or hell, what are we like? Is there a form? Is there a shape? Is there a body? If it's a body, which body? Whose body? What do you think it might? How are we going to exist in these eternal spaces?
I love this question. Jesus came in a body, right? He came in flesh. He came as a human. And so I believe that we're created in his image, and we have bodies, and bodies are important, and our bodies are holy. And I don't think that they just disappear. I think that, we're made new, and there's no more pain. Whatever is inflicting you, whatever the thorn in your side is, right? When you're made new, I think that's gone. But I think the body is something that's very holy to the Lord.
Yeah, and I'm like on the thought process that there's a spiritual body. I don't know if it's biblical or if there was maybe like a philosophical question about like, hey, if you were to get injured, if you were to lose a limb, do you show up in heaven missing that limb? And I think their thought process was, no, there's a spiritual body, like all that you are made new, and I think that's kind of cool, because if you are, obviously something were to happen to you, like, your whole body's there, your spiritual body's there.
Yeah, I'd like to think that when we die and go to heaven, there's something there, and it's not what we have here. Certainly not what we have here on the day we die. Because I'm not sure I want my body on the day I die. So some of y'all know my mom passed away a couple months ago. And she'd been ill for a while. And before she passed away, she'd mentioned, I'd really like to get better so I can go hiking again. And that's something I actually said at her service was that, Mom, guess what? You get to go hiking again. And that was just a nice picture in my mind of, I don't know what her body is like in heaven, whether it's spiritual, physical, whatever, I don't know, but I know she's not in pain anymore.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I agree that I think there's something, and I personally wrestle because I do believe we are spiritual beings having a human existence. But then when Jesus is resurrected, he is resurrected in a body, and a body with wounds, right? He still has the scars in his hands. And so while he is no longer bleeding, he does still have the mark. And so I wonder about that. And if I do need my body in heaven, because I have work to do, spiritual work, good work, which body, right? Yeah. Can I pick? Because I gotta, 30 was great. I'd like to take that one. Best year. Maybe 30, even 33, I had that, but wondering, how much. And then again, this idea, well, if you lost a limb or even have lived your whole life with maybe a physical ailment, is that gone? Or is the pain and stigmatism and maybe division because of it gone? Again, kind of back to that. It's not that we don't have wheelchairs in heaven. There's just no curbs. And I think, the answer is, I don't know. And I wonder too, is that when I'm there fully, and maybe even a little bit experiencing now on earth in my physical body and all the ailments, that there'll become a place where that becomes less important, where it doesn't control me. It doesn't hold me, right? The fact that my body is not 33 anymore, and how I can maybe start to live with a little more acceptance of who I am in this body. And maybe that's a way to also experience that heaven here now, as Jesus does proclaim. What about this? Who do you think is going to be in heaven, and who do you think might be in hell?
You want names?
If you got them.
Turn your phones off.
This is recorded.
Okay, I'm not answering this question.
I'll answer. I think it's maybe not who we think it's going to be. I think there'll be a few surprises.
Absolutely. I'm with you on that. I think like I post this is a while ago, but if you truly believe that, this is, I think you talked about redeeming grace. Like,
Right.
if you truly believe that, I mean, that means anything, anything that you might have done in your life, if you turn and you repent, you do the things that need to be done, you can be redeemed. And that kind of changes the way I look at people, because I memean, people make some really bad mistakes. I made bad mistakes, and you think somebody who made a terrible decision, and if you were to pop up in heaven and be like, wait a minute, how did he make it? I would hate for that to happen. But I mean, if you truly believe that, hey, if I turn to God, if I repent, if I do the right things to correct my wrongs, I can make it to heaven, even if I've done the worst thing possible. And that's my thought process on that.
So I'll share a funny story, and I think this is how maybe heaven's going to be. When I first moved to Pearland, I found a new gym and found that one of the coaches was a guy I went to high school with. And I was like, oh, okay, I kind of know. We weren't like buds, but we hung in the same crowds. And in his little bio, it said he was a Christian. And I immediately go, Yeah, I know this is all recorded. Okay, thought he did not live that life in high school. And as I scoffed out loud, looking at that, I realized he might be saying the same thing about me today. If he found out I, was in Pearland as a pastor. And I just think that's probably how it might be. That we would maybe scoff and think, no way. And someone might just be thinking the same thing about us too. And that maybe reminder for me that thank God I don't get to decide. Thank the grace and love and mercy of Jesus Christ that I am not the one who says who's in or out, because I wouldn't even make it by my own standards, right? And so I think that's something I also hold on to, that I believe firmly it's gonna surprise me, and I might surprise a few people when I show up too. All right, last question. Can you be a Christian? No, sorry. Can you not be a Christian? Well, let me reread it. Now I've forgotten how they worded it. It was a good one. Can you call yourself a Christian and not believe in hell or heaven? Can you call yourself a Christian and not believe in heaven or hell? Your expert answers.
I guess I'll try to go first. So I think you can call yourself whatever you want.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you're right. So,
Fair.
Yeah, I think you can call yourself a Christian and not believe in heaven or hell, but I don't know that that means you meet the definition of what God believes or Jesus believes his followers are.
Yeah, so I would wonder about a person who calls themselves a Christian but doesn't believe in a heaven or a hell, I think I would just have a lot of questions. Like, well, what are you working towards then, right? What does salvation look like for you if you don't believe in a heaven, right? Because we're called to bring heaven here on earth. And so how do we do that if heaven doesn't exist, right? And without a hell, then you just get to do whatever you want. You don't have anything you don't have any consequences, right? You don't have any boundaries. There's no parameters to your behavior. So I'm not sure what kind of Christian that would be.
Yeah, so I mean, I see it as just kind of anytime I read the Bible, it's you pick up these words and you're like, I had to Google that. And there's 50 different, translations, and I'm just figuring out, angels can mean angels of God, agents of God, all these different meanings. And I can see people getting caught up in the words. What is heaven? Again, what does it look like? And the first thing we talked about is we don't know. So that's where I'm kind of on that. Maybe we still have the same goal in mind, but if you're caught up on what it looks like, how to get there, I see how the lines get blurred.
Right. So you want to see, and we need to be able to live by faith, not by sight.
Absolutely.
Right? And we're trying to construct this image. We want details. We want to know what color. We want to use our senses, right? Because that's what we do here on earth to experience our world. We make these constructs of things that make sense. We want to make sense of everything because that gives us a sense of control. We don't get to do that with God.
So I think I always want to refer back to what does the word Christian really mean? And I went to seminary. That's what they teach you. It's a degree of words. And Christian means little Christ. To be little Christ. To be like Christ a little bit here on earth, right? And so for me, if you are striving to live the life that Jesus lived, which is in submission to God's will over his own, right? If you are striving to see people, move with compassion toward them, feed them, heal them, set them free from the chains of sin and death, then that's a Christian, I'm kind of on the boat of, and the heaven and hell stuff, well, you'll figure it out.
We'll find out.
Eventually. Right. And then also for me, I would tie it back to what does Jesus say about heaven? And he talks about it here and now more than he ever talks about it as an afterlife experience. Right. And so, and again, that for me gives me comfort of just of where I currently, serve in my denomination of, hey, again, we really don't know. But probably what we're doing right here and now, just like the life of Jesus is so important, maybe that's important too. How might we bring a little heaven wherever we go, and maybe even try and drive out the hell around us, right? And again, that's just where I'm at today. I don't know. We'll, once again, we'll figure it out. And I just want to close by actually offering each one of you a chance. So, if someone is really wrestling, right, and maybe not just curious, not just wondering, but maybe feeling I need to find these answers, what is the hope that you would offer them?
I would offer the hope of finding surrender and rest in the here and now. When you can learn to just say, I don't know, and I don't have to figure it all out, and I can take my hands off of it, right? And you get to just embrace the mystery of God. That's where the real gift is, because when you think you can define God, that's not God. We want to package it up and make it easy to carry around, and that's not actually. We can't diminish the fullness of who God is and what God has in store for us. And so I would say just take your hands off, rest, relax,
Yeah, I think I think about the fact that, the Bible tells us that we were made in God's image. That doesn't mean we were made perfect. So it's okay to not be perfect. None of us are perfect. We all screw up. We're all struggling to understand what it's all about, what to do next, how to be better, how to live a life of closer to Jesus. And we all struggle with it. So don't worry if you're struggling with it. We all of us are.
Yeah, and I would kind of co-sign on that. My hope and what I keep is, we have a God that uses grace and mercy, and everybody needs grace and just that mercy on top. I mean, there's so much that we can do wrong in this life, but having a God that understands you for who you are because he made you kind of gives me that hope that if I could just get my life back on track like I'm supposed to, it'll all be redeemed.
And I think my hope would be if you're asking, if you're wondering, if you're questioning, you're already a step there. You actually care enough to ask the question, to dare to wonder, to dare to dream and think. And that's better than ignoring God completely. And so I believe that's God's constant pursuit of you and your willingness to listen, your willingness to at least begin to think about turning toward God and what God has for you. Thank you to each of you. Would you give them like a round of applause? This was very vulnerable, real work. And thank you for asking your questions. The reason why we started Real Talk is because we really wanted to show that real Christians don't have it all figured out. We have a variety of ideas and decisions and discussions, and that's more than okay. We believe God is big enough that we can ask questions, we can disagree, and we can still love Jesus and trust that Jesus is doing good work through us in community. Thanks again for being here tonight. We're actually just going to close it up with a couple of songs, but you do not have to rush off. Stay. I'm happy to talk with some of you about these questions that you texted in. They got really specific, and so I'd love to do that. Also, on your tables, you are invited to our next series of Let's Talk About What We Believe. What we do is we just meet at taco places, Torchy's on the east side, Lupe Tortilla on the west side, and we're just going to talk about our faith. Same kind of thing we're doing now. There'll be no microphones and no cameras. It'll just be at your table, but I highly recommend for you to come. Bring your questions, bring what you think are the firm answers, and bring a friend who might be interested in having some real discussions about faith and God and all the messiness of people too. So thank you again for coming out to this first event. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you at season 2.
Real Talk Podcast is produced by First United Methodist Church Pearland in collaboration with Pearland Podcast Studios, recorded here in Pearland, Texas. We invite you to check out our website at fumcpearland.org to check out additional events and opportunities for you to engage in real talk about faith and relationships.